Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ruck and Roll Rugby, where this evening we are going to dissect what was an absolute shambolic show at the end in the last 20 minutes on Saturday. Wales 16, New Zealand 54. We're going to go through all of the key talking points from the game. We're going to go through the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, and I'm going to go through it all with my good friend Brandon. Brandon, what did you make of the game Saturday, mate?
Oh, it was a tough one to watch at points, but also an enjoyable one in a strange way. As a Wales supporter, at some points, all you could do was applaud the All Blacks and how good they were. But I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was definitely an eye opener for Wales. An early setback in the campaign. It'll definitely will be. But afterwards, Wayne Pivac seemed quite upbeat in his post-match interview. He talked obviously that there was a lack of match preparation. He said that we were extremely undercooked. New Zealand are coming off the back of a rugby championship, played already some international tests this year, and we're coming in after playing a couple of club games. So there was a massive difference in terms of that. But there were some assets of the game that I think Wales could take some positives away. There's a lot of people out in the media talking about the negatives of what happened for Wales. And the first positive I think we're going to talk about is going to come from a negative. So early stages of the game, we get an opportunity to attack. And as a result of it, the Gareth Anscombe interception pass to Beauden Barrett. But if we look at it in a little bit more detail, you can see here, I think Anscombe chooses the wrong option here. We can see that if you look at Havili coming up on his outside, Havili has already got eyes on that man, Johnny Williams. He's going to make that hit all day long. The inside defenders are covering the man on the inside, who I believe is Tane Basham. But if you look on the outside, you've actually got a 3-on-2 on the outside. Obviously, wrong option was taken, and Barrett went in under the post for an early score. But at that point, like you said, we'd started the game quite brightly, Brandon, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought we had. I thought we'd looked quite comfortable in possession. We were going through some phases, looking good. But I think it was a theme throughout the whole afternoon. Obviously, we'll carry on with the game and we'll go through the game itself. But I don't know about you. For me, I never really felt like we were truly going to penetrate that defence all that much, whether we were really going to create something. It felt like we had a really nice build-up, but we never knew really how to get the job done. There didn't seem to be an obvious game plan. But I mean, with that option there, with the still that you've got there of Anscombe, there's options out wide, and the defenders have come in. There's space out wide, and with someone as good as Josh Adams right on the wing, Jonathan Davis has that lovely handoff that he can use so well. There were opportunities in this game to expose the All Blacks.
Yeah, definitely. I think in early stages, I think we almost looked a little bit hesitant. Anscombe, he threw a couple of floaty passes here or there. But like you said, massively, it came down to a fact that after we'd been met with what was the incredible line speed that the All Blacks brought, I think Havili and Linnett-Brown really put us under pressure all afternoon. It didn't matter what we did. I think they just aimed to put as much pressure on Anscombe in that first half as possible and just looked for him to make mistakes around them. And to be fair to Anscombe, he's had 4 or 5 games back since his ACL. A long time out of the game. And to be fair, I think Sam Warburton mentioned it in commentary. It was really hard for him to get back into that game. I don't think I would have been ready to play the All Blacks after 50 matches, never mind after just 5. So I think he did really well just to be out on the pitch. And in the early phases, we did look like we did have some sort of an understanding as to where we were going to go. But it just seemed to diminish as the half went on. And I think that first try was the big thing. We're going to talk about it. This is the contentious point, okay? Beauden Barrett, yellow card or not yellow card. Before we have a little look and we start discussing it in more detail, when you're watching it, first and foremost, what was your initial reaction, Brandon?
Oh, it's a yellow card every day of the week. It is a yellow card. I did a quick reaction on my channel, and most of the comments were in agreement that it was a yellow. For me, the refs bottled it. And I don't like to point at refs and things like that because that's not the way I think the game should be. But the ref bottled that decision. For me, it's as clear as day that it's a deliberate knock-on. And as we'll see from the stills that you show in just a second, yeah. I can't really see any reason for it not to be a yellow.
So the directive from World Rugby is that they're working down from a yellow. So the first instance is is there a clean line break opportunity? For me, there was. Regardless of whether you've got defence coming across, Johnny Williams is right on Owen Lane's inside. If that pass lands, Johnny Williams is making a good 5-10 metres regardless. Even though it's not a clean line break, they're still making yards and they're making possession. But for me, when I watched the game back and I gathered the stills that I'm going to show now, this was where the biggest thing for me came in, okay? So if we look at the first one, so there's the instance there. You can see Barrett, it's just before the slap down there. Johnny Williams has got a clear bit of space in front of him. But on the left-hand side, you can see just out of shot there, just underneath the scoreboard, is Thomas Williams. Now, from this shot, doesn't seem like that's much of an instance there to cause things. You're still looking that there's a defensive man coming across that's probably going to hit Johnny Williams, which is probably why the referee has gone from a yellow down. If we look at it from a slightly wider position, you can see that Thomas Williams is completely unmarked. So if Johnny Williams makes that break there, Thomas Williams is going to come on an out to in line, and he's going to be right up on Johnny Williams' shoulder there. I'm sorry, I don't care who's coming across. If Thomas Williams takes that ball on the inside, he's getting to the try line, if not pretty close. So although the knockdown didn't affect the direct line break, I think it definitely did stifle a line break. If you look at the positioning of Thomas Williams there, yes, he's quite a way across, but you've got to take into consideration Johnny Williams is going to carry that ball 5-10 metres. How far can Thomas Williams cover in 5-10 metres? I'm pretty sure that is a definite line break opportunity gone. But, that was one particular opportunity. And I don't think I'd say heads dropped at that point. Mm-hmm. We still gained a penalty from it because he was still a knockdown and we went to touch. And I think that's where some of our problems started to come. We only lost 2 lineouts in the game. But for me, they were 2 very important ones. This one that happened subsequently from the penalty wasn't one of them. However, it was an extremely messy ball as a result. Now, Brandon, there's one thing you've got to say, the loss of Ken Owens was huge in the build-up. But going into that, Ryan Elias, do you think that he was the right man to take over that mantle at hooker, considering the problems that we had last autumn when we looked at the lineouts that we had? And obviously the finishing off of the Six Nations.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously Ken Owens ruled out with injury a few hours after the team's release. You've been preparing throughout the week. I'm sure Pivac would have known his team at the start of the week that had been working with the starters throughout the week, that had been working on the lineouts, on the different calls. But it's clearly an issue. It's clearly a massive issue. And as you said, the 2 lineouts that we lost one, I think is in the first half, where we're in their 22. We've got the penalty. We've gone to the corner. We've decided to turn down the 3 points. Anscombe puts a brilliant kick in towards the corner. We go to throw it, and it's overthrown. It's over Adam Beard, and New Zealand collect, and they manage to clear their lines. And against the All Blacks, you just have to use your set pieces. Your set pieces are your base or your platform for where you work from. And if you can't secure that ball, then you don't really deserve to be within the game, to be honest. Ryan Elias, I'm not a forward, as you can probably tell. So I don't know how the line-out works, who decides on the calls, who decides what calls will be used when, whether New Zealand worked out the calls. But I don't think that was the issue. I just felt like there was a little bit of confusion between who was going for it. Was Ryan Elias overthrowing it? Was it his technique that was wrong? But even last year when Ken Owens was playing, we still had issues in the line-out. So I don't know what is going on. Is it the coaching? Is it the pressure of having 72,000 people in the Principality once again? What is it? I don't know, but it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I sorry, I'll have to address that. I wasn't throwing any shade on Ryan Elias then. I think that a lot of the pressure does fall on him, because he's the guy that sort of distributes the ball and makes sure that quality is there for the line-out jumpers to collect. But like you said, I think the line-out is something that we've massively struggled with. I think it's always like one of those things. This season, the drive-in line-out has been so influential. You watch across the United Rugby Championship, and especially in the Gallagher Premiership, sides are using the drive-in line-out to such effect. And if we look at that line-out you were talking about in particular, we've actually got a really good setup here. We've got Adam Beard going up at the front. Tane Basham is coming around on the loop. Wyn Jones is already ready to make that bind. So we've got pretty decent shape going into it. But I think, just looking in at it, there is a mislift. At that point, if you look back, the ball is pretty much above the line out at this point. and you look in, Moriarty is in full extension, and I believe that is, I don't know. I think that might be Tom Francis then lifting him. Oh, no, it's not. It's Will Rowland, sorry, because you can see the lifting blocks on him. And they've just mislifted, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's a mislift, and as a result, the ball goes across the top, New Zealand collect, and they're off and away. So the key moments there, like, Sam Warburton said in commentary, taking your penalties is great early on just to get yourself those points into the game. But if you're going to beat the All Blacks, you're going to need to score tries and you're going to need to be clinical. That is a prime opportunity to, if we don't score a try, we're at least putting pressure on the All Blacks. Maybe a couple of collapse lineouts, the referee's looking at maybe a yellow card. So that's where we start to build up and start to build that pressure. But I think as that first half went on, we did start to see glimmers of hope. And for me, there was one shining light in that first half, and it was this man, Tame Basham. I don't know about you, Brandon, but I think he looked like a man that had played 50-odd times for Wales when it came to that game on Saturday. He showed absolute grit and determination against the All Blacks. How good a game do you think he had?
I thought he was our best player by a large margin. His work ethic around the field, carrying the ball, his work at the breakdown. I think he got a couple of turnovers, and he had one massive one in our 22 when the All Blacks were on the counter, and you thought, oh, here we go again. But he managed to get the turnover. And how old is he? 21, something like that. He's a young lad. His third cap. He obviously played against Canada, but it's nothing compared to playing against the All Blacks in front of a full Principality. And he's been playing really well for the Dragons, and so he's deserved this opportunity. And with players injured, such as Tipuric and Navidi in here and around his position, it's a fantastic opportunity for him. I think he took it with both hands. He played with a maturity beyond his years. He knew what to do when. He wasn't reckless with the ball. He was protective of it. And he backed himself in open spaces as well. He made 2 or 3 really nice runs. I thought he was fantastic. And I think he has to start next week against the Springboks.
Yeah, his support lines were excellent. I think the one line break he made where he ran off Thomas Williams' shoulder. Thomas Williams is going to make those sniping runs. And when you've got someone with the pace the Basham has got, he's going to come around the corner and he's going to take that ball flat to the line. And if you can give it to him at the right moment, like we saw when he made that, I think the still I showed there is when he made his line break. He's got that dynamic ability to make it through that gap. And I think along with Wainwright, I think Wainwright had one of his best games in a Welsh shirt on Saturday. And I definitely think moving forward, number 8 is definitely his position. We saw in the setup for the run that Owen Lane made before the Bowden Barrett slap down. That was cleaned up by Wainwright, chasing a ball back, and he ran sort of 30 yards across the pitch to find Owen Lane, who then made the break. So I think those two worked well. But the next thing that we're going to talk about is relating to the third member of that back row, and Ross Moriarty, just before halftime, went off with an injury. Now, there was a lot of debate. The first one with the slap down, I think that was a straight yellow. I don't think anybody could argue with that one. This one, not so clear cut. When you watched it initially, Brandon, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think it was a double yellow card? Did you think it was a red and yellow card? Did you think that there wasn't a lot that Laulala could do there, given the position? What was your take on it?
Well, being a non-biased Welshman, I was screaming for the red card, naturally. My initial reaction, I thought contact with the head, so he has to work his way down from a red. Naturally, those are the protocols for a red card, potentially to do with contact with the head. There were mitigating factors for sure. Moriarty had dipped down quite low, but then, as you'll show from the stills in a second, there's just no attempt to wrap. I'm still 50-50 on it. I can see both sides of the argument. I'm not sure. I would probably, I was leaning towards the yellow, to be honest, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it was a red. But obviously, being non-biased, I was screaming for the red card.
So, yeah, I think you've got to look at it from both sides. So I went to the World Rugby website yesterday and looked what their take is on it, because a lot of people on social media were saying, look, where do we stand on it? Because you watch, for example, the Gallagher Premiership, if there is any level of contact with the head and the player is in danger, it's a red card. You see more in the URC and the top 14. Referees are looking around that, mitigating factors. Is there a dip? Is there an attempt to drop the level of tackle height? But if we look at it and we work our way through, so initially there is contact with the head. So the referee has to start at a red card. Then you drop down considering the mitigating factors. Now, as you said, the mitigating factor is Laulala has dropped his height and Moriarty has dropped his height. So naturally, we're going to arrive at a yellow card. There is, however, something I think that needs to be addressed and needs to be made more clear to those of us watching the game, to people who are commentating on the games, people who are reviewing the games. At what point do we bring in recklessness? Because if we look at this shot here, this is the point the contact was made with Moriarty's head. Laulala is making no attempt whatsoever to even wrap. His arm is facing down towards the turf. You know, you look at Blackadder, you can see him just out the shot. He's made the wrap there. He's trying to make the tackle. I've got no qualms with that whatsoever. What does really start to get to me then is, you've given this man a yellow card for direct contact to the head. He has made no effort in that situation whatsoever to wrap his arm around. You know, even if he's lifted that arm slightly, he's still making an effort to wrap. But the arm is facing directly downwards. And for me, that's where we've got to start to clear that line up. I'm not saying that it was a definite red, but what I'm saying is there's so many referees say, high level of danger, there's contact to the player's head, I have to protect the player, it is a red card. But in that instance, not only was he hit in the head once, he was hit twice, and the second of those hits coming from Laulala, for me, was far more malicious. I think Blackadder was absolutely fine. He's made an attempt to wrap. Moriarty's dipping. I don't think he deserved a yellow. But I think the Laulala is a solid yellow, but I think there are elements that could be a red card in it. But get down into the comments, guys. Tell us what you thought about it. Do you think I'm talking absolute nonsense? Make sure that, you know, you do tell me if I am. But I personally, in that situation, I would have said that you've got to protect the player. Moriarty's been hit very hard by a shoulder that's dropping at, you know, and Laulala's stationary. So he's going into 120 kilos stationary. So there's not a great deal he can do in that situation, I know, but he's got to lift the arm, or he's got to do something that's going to remove that impact to Moriarty's head. But that's something for you guys to get down into the comments, and we'll discuss in a little bit more detail. But we did get the yellow, and we moved on. And it was our opportunity to try and exploit the All Blacks just before halftime. And similarly to what you said earlier on, we just seemed to run out of ideas. I've got a still here. This was just before halftime. And if we look at it here, to the left of Thomas Williams, he's got 4 players that are pretty much stood in a straight line. To his right, he's got 6 Welsh forwards and Johnny Williams, all being covered off by 3 All Blacks. Now, in that situation, Brandon, was it frustrating for you to watch that we had the man advantage, but it looked like that there was no plan to try and exploit it?
Absolutely agree with you. We looked a little bit clueless at points. We seemed to have really nice build-up, as I said at the start. We'd go through the phases. The All Blacks would sometimes slow our ball down, but sometimes would just be static. At the breakdown, the ball would be there. The ref would be ball is out, or, you know, it'd be available to play, and we'd still be stood there. And Thomas Williams would look left, look right, and then he'd say, "Oh, I got some forwards," and just pop it up to them. There was no plan of what to do. There was nobody taking ownership of those situations and saying, all right, we're going to go for this pattern, we're going to go for this play that we've been doing in training, we've got the extra man, we need to stretch the game. That's what you needed to do in that situation. You needed to stretch them out. You need to get width. And if you can get width and you draw defenders in, and if you can keep a man out wide, then it creates a natural overlap, and you can get in the corner with the likes of Owen Lane or Josh Adams. And I was really struggling to understand what the game plan was. And this is something that I do struggle with, Pivac, is that, you know, he came into Wales with this ideology of rugby, of playing attacking rugby, playing heads up rugby, seeing what's in front of you, going for it, still having a structure in that. And yet we really haven't seen that from him at all with Wales. He tried to do it to an extent in the autumn last year, reverted back to what Wales knew well in the Six Nations, and we got success from that. And yet now we seem to be stuck between those two, and the players really don't know what to do, whether to go and throw the ball about, or whether to, all right, we'll stick to what we know, what we've been doing for 10 plus years. So it seems like the players have that confusion of what to do. And in those kind of situations where you see there, you need someone with a clear voice, a clear head, to know what to do, to know what run to make, to know what pass to play. And when the All Blacks are down to 14 men, that is like a gift. You've got to take full advantage of that, because you know if the All Blacks were in that situation, they absolutely would. And we just didn't seem to have any clear ideas of what to do, which was really frustrating for us all.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing was, and you looked how, like, that instance that I just showed there, that's a slow ball situation. There's no two ways about it. You've got a flat back line to your left, and then you've got a pod of forwards to your right. For me, the only situation there is that we go to slow ball tactics, but we just looked so stressed in that slow ball situation. You looked at the All Blacks, and I talked about this to you yesterday. Ardy Surveyor, he picks the ball up from the base, and he is an absolute nightmare to put down. But the big thing that you notice with him is when he picks that ball up to carry, when he enters that ruck, he's never looking to clear out. He's never looking to, arch over the ball to make sure that it's protected. As soon as the player who had the ball previously has hit the deck, he's in straight after him, picking the ball up before that ruck has even had time to set. And I think that's where our biggest problem is slow ball is always a creator of fast ball. You go through your slow ball phases, you gain your advantage, you start bringing the defense back and back and back to a point where you can start to exploit them with your backs because they're on that back foot. But New Zealand just seemed comfortable. We were sending up one-up runners, send a couple of men in to clear out, and they were like, great, we'll take this all night long. But we just didn't at any point. Basham did it once or twice where he'd come in with a flying line at one way or another. But I think when Moriarty went off, Seb Davis came on, and Seb Davis, fantastic at what he does, but that wasn't the sort of game we needed a player like him. We needed someone that was going to say, look, give me the ball, I will run hard, and I will run directly. And one of the big things that's been mentioned a lot is obviously the loss of Alan Wynne-Jones was that loss of leadership then as we moved forward in the game. But you need that sort of figurehead on the pitch that's going to say, look, 3 or 4 phases, that's all we're going to go with, and then we're going to go to the back line. If it goes wrong, we go back to slow ball. But it wasn't really clear. And I will say for Anscombe, he did find it very difficult in terms of being given options. But then Pivac said before the game he was going to bring Priestland on in the second half. And for me, I think things started to improve when Priestland came on. I don't know about you. One of the big things was that Johnny McNichol was a huge asset. And I think it was just one of those options then that Priestland knew he had players like McNichol around him. I'm going to bring up a still now, where this was when we started to show chances. So this opportunity here, Rhys Priestland, ball in hand, he's looking to give the pass. However, at the same time, he's got Wynne-Jones as his first option that I've highlighted in black there. Wynne-Jones is keeping that inside defence on us. You can see Whitlock, he is looking at Wynne-Jones and nobody else. Looking then at the next 3 All Blacks out from Whitlock, all 3 of them are going in on the ball, or they're going in on Basham, who is running that outside line. If you look at Havili there, he's actually on his back heels. He's actually absorbed by that Basham run. They knew what he did in the first half. They knew he was going to cause those potential problems, which then opened the space. And this was what actually caused one of our line breaks. You can see the arcing run that McNichol runs around the back here, and that's where he gets the ball and he can be dangerous. So not so much would you start McNichol next week, but a player of McNichol's style is definitely something you can see Pivac trying to fit into his style. But do you think that it was just seen in isolated periods, or do you think it was something that we were trying to do, but the All Blacks just kept shutting it down at every possible opportunity?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think there were moments where we were trying to do things like that, but then again, you've got to credit how good the All Blacks were. I think for Anscombe, he'll be honest, he didn't have his greatest game on a rugby field. I thought Priestland did do well when he comes on, and I do like Priestland, but I love Anscombe. But I think it's easier coming off the bench, seeing what's happened already, seeing the spaces already from the bench, a tired defence to come forward. But again, that doesn't always need to come from a player. That should come from a coach saying, look, there's spaces in behind, or the spaces out wide. That should come from the coach. And I don't know how that message is coming across, if that's coming across to the players enough or not, or whether there was a fear of embarrassment of the score, because obviously we nearly conceded the most we've ever conceded against the All Blacks. But luckily, Geordie Barrett missed his final conversion. But I think McNichol, was solid, very solid. When he got the ball, he looked dangerous. He didn't get enough of the ball, and that can be said for quite a few of our players. It'd be interesting to see if he starts next week. For me, I would, and of course, Pivac knows him very, very well from his time at the Scarlets. So I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a confused team at the minute. And I think South Africa will pose a different test because of their style of play. The All Blacks, I think, have the perfect style to beat us, to be honest. I think South Africa will be more of where, I'm not saying we're as good as South Africa, but I think our style suits to play against them more. And I think we can deal with their style a lot more than we can with the All Blacks.
Yeah, and it's all about reading what's in front of you, really, isn't it? And we know what South Africa will bring. You know, the spring box kick, as some people renamed them, you know, with everything going up in the air every time they get hold of the ball. But we know they're going to kick a lot. And I think McNichol looked solid under the high ball. I got to say it for the back three as well. I think Owen Lane and Josh Adams both look good under the high ball. So if that's something the South Africa are going to bring, then, you know, there is that element there. But you've got the likes of Louis Rees-Zammit that could come back into the fold. You've got Liam Williams that could potentially be available, but, you know, hasn't played a game all season since he had his appendix removed. So it's lots of question marks above these players, whether they're going to be involved or not. But I think that we've got to talk about the one positive that came from the game, and it was Priestland's try. So I brought up a still of it just because it was such an obvious thing. It was there all game. Look at Havili there, right? He's highlighted just to the left of that red arrow, which eventually is where Priestland puts the ball. He is completely flat-footed there because he's come up at such a pace, but all of a sudden, Priestland has dropped that ball onto the boot and he knows that he's in trouble because he's committed himself way too much. Johnny Williams is in pretty much sprint mode, so that ball's going in behind, and as it did, it was try time. But that was something that was coming all game. You know, you could see how fast they were coming up. That's all they needed was a chip in behind or a little grubber just to take the All Blacks off the front foot and to get in behind them. You know, Owen Lane did a lovely up and under at one point just to get in behind our All Blacks defence, and then we could start to play. But I think we just didn't do it enough. But well taken try, you've got to say, from Johnny Williams, and a little bit of magic from Rhys Priestland.
Yeah, a little bit of magic from Rhys Priestland. But no, I think the thing is that, as you said, that was an obvious option all afternoon. The All Blacks were really coming up in that blitz style of defence. There wasn't all that much cover in behind. Geordie Barrett seemed to always be a little bit to one of the sides. He didn't seem to be very central in his defensive positioning, which obviously then leaves that little bit of space in behind. And I think Anscombe's in a weird position. You know, he hasn't played international rugby or really any rugby for 2 years. He started the season well for the Ospreys, but not exceptional. He seems to have been playing carefully, probably worried about getting injured again, which is natural to think like that. I thought Priestland took his chance really well. It's a nice try, but that option was always there. It was always there. But we tried another kick. And that didn't work quite so well as Will Jordan enjoyed that kick, I think. So
no, I think this was the beginning of the end, though. At this point, you know, we got our try. Discipline again lets us down. You know, the All Blacks kick and we give away a silly penalty, which they get in and score off. But then at that point, I think it was the beginning of the end. And I brought this one up because for me, this was the point where I knew the Wales were going to drop off. We put a kick in, and you can see just out the shot there, the ball is probably about 2 or 3 seconds from landing in Will Jordan's hands. The only people you've got chasing are Will Rowlands and Josh Adams. And that gap, that line I've drawn there, it's an obvious thing. He's going to run into that space. But that's exactly what he did. He ran directly into that chip and chase, and he was in behind. And that really summed up the end of Wales's afternoon, really. But you've got to say, give credit to New Zealand, Brandon, for that 20 minutes after the Will Jordan try. Wow, that's some of the best interpassing and interlinking rugby I think I've ever seen.
Honestly, oh gosh, it was unreal. It's some of the best rugby that I have maybe ever seen. It's certainly up there with the 2015 team that won the World Cup. The ability of them just to keep the ball alive. I was talking to you about this yesterday, that even if they were going for the offload and the offload wouldn't reach the hands, it'd bounce along the ground a bit, bounce back or whatever. They didn't really care. It was just keep the ball alive because they realised that we were blown out of our arses. We were absolutely blown out of our arses, and that's understandable. International rugby is a huge step up from club rugby, and the All Blacks have been playing at this level or even higher for the past 2-3 months, while we haven't really. Some of those boys wouldn't have played that level of rugby since March, so it's a big step up. But the ability of them just to keep the ball alive, spot the gaps, back themselves, play. They had freedom in their play, but they also had structure in that freedom, I felt. And they just seemed so comfortable to try things. There wasn't a fear of trying things. And at points, all you could do was just sit and applaud. That's all you could do. And I would be so surprised if anyone comes close to them this autumn. I can't see anyone stopping them. For me, ignoring the rankings, they're the best team in the world by quite a distance. And just the ability of them just to keep that ball alive. And then they have the ability to bring someone like Richie Mo'unga off the bench. And oh my gosh, it just gets worse and worse. But they were outstanding. And even though we've spoken about these refereeing decisions, we've spoken about a couple of things that Wales got wrong, it didn't make a difference in the end. We'd have lost, maybe not by as much, but we'd have lost in the end. And this All Blacks team are ridiculously good.
Yeah, and you like you said, you've got to take your hat off to them. I agree with you. I think on paper, ignore the paper. On the field, they are the best team in the world at the minute, and they certainly play the best brand of rugby. But that's where we're going to leave it for now. We've got a lot to ponder before we take on South Africa next week. Myself and Brandon, when the teams are announced, we will go through and we'll do another video talking about that and where we think that game's going to go. But for now, thank you very much, Brandon. Thanks for joining. And we'll see you all later on this week for Wales versus South Africa, the preview.